Learn English through story. The Game of Hearts. In the heart of New York City, amidst the glimmering skyscrapers and constant pulse of life, Emily Lawson found herself at the crossroads of desire and duty. As an accomplished marketing executive with years of success behind her, she was finally in the running for a long-awaited promotion that could change her life. She had sacrificed so much for her career, friends, relationships, and sometimes even her own happiness. But the goal was always clear: success, power, and the freedom that came with it. Her boss, James Callahan, was a charismatic man in his late 40s, married to his work, but rumored to be estranged from his wife. Emily often caught herself wondering if the rumors were true. She admired James not just for his achievements, but also for his intensity, the way he commanded a room, and truthfully, there was an undeniable tension between them. He frequently invited her to lunch meetings, asked for her opinion on matters outside her department, and shared insights that he didn't divulge to anyone else. On one evening, as the city lights flickered and cast a glow over the office, James invited Emily for a drink to celebrate a recent account they had won together. They clinked glasses, the wine flowed, and conversation drifted from work to personal lives, dreams, and regrets. There was something magnetic between them that night, an intimacy that had been simmering just beneath the surface. It was there, in the candlelit glow of that quiet corner of the city, that James hinted at something beyond professional admiration. A subtle touch of his hand, a prolonged look, moments that suggested a different kind of connection. Emily felt her heart race. She knew the dangers of mixing personal and professional lives, yet here she was, balancing on the edge of that very precipice. Days turned into weeks, and Emily found herself drawn deeper into this dance of attraction. Their stolen glances turned into secret texts, which then led to dinners under the guise of working late. She knew she was playing a dangerous game, and yet, with each passing encounter, she convinced herself that this was something unique, something worth the risk. But this wasn't the only complication in Emily's life. As her relationship with James intensified, she found herself reconnecting with Alex, an old friend and her college sweetheart. Alex was everything James wasn't: steady, kind, compassionate, and grounded. He worked as a social worker, helping struggling youth find their path. Their worlds couldn't be more different. Yet Alex had always understood Emily in ways that no one else could. Over coffee one weekend, Alex told her about the nonprofit organization he was starting to support underprivileged communities in the city. His passion reminded Emily of the simpler dreams she once had, dreams that had been buried under the demands of her career. Spending time with Alex was a breath of fresh air, a reminder of who she used to be before ambition took over her life. As her involvement with both men deepened, Emily found herself torn between two versions of herself: the ambitious professional who thrived in the high-stakes world of corporate power, and the woman who yearned for a simpler, more meaningful life. She knew she couldn't continue living this double life forever. A choice had to be made, but the allure of James's world, with its glamour and power, was hard to resist. Even as she felt a growing sense of guilt and unease, the turning point came during a weekend getaway with James. He had invited her to his secluded lake house, far away from the prying eyes of the city. There, surrounded by nature and stripped of the usual distractions, Emily began to see James more clearly. Beneath his charm and confidence, she noticed a man driven by insecurity, a man who valued control over connection. She began to realize that, for him, relationships were transactional, a means to fulfill his own desires rather than a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. On their last night at the lake house, James made an offhand comment about her potential promotion. He suggested that her rise in the company could be expedited, subtly implying that their relationship could play a role in her career advancement. Emily's heart sank. She had always prided herself on her hard work, her dedication, and her merit. The thought that her success might be tainted by this affair was a blow to her self-worth. Emily returned to the city with a heavy heart. Her once blinding infatuation with James was fading, replaced by a growing awareness of the moral compromises she had made. She began to question not only her relationship with him, but also her values, her choices, and what truly mattered to her. In the days that followed, Emily withdrew from James, focusing instead on her work and spending more time with Alex. Being with Alex felt right in a way that was different from her time with James. There was no pretense, no power games, just genuine connection and understanding. One evening, as they walked through Central Park, Alex confessed his feelings for her. He told her that he had never stopped loving her, that he believed they could find happiness together if she was willing to give it a chance. Emily felt her heart swell with emotion. She knew that a future with Alex would mean leaving behind the life of ambition she had pursued for so long. It would mean choosing love and simplicity over power and prestige. But perhaps, she thought, that was the real game of hearts. The courage to choose a life of authenticity over one of hollow success. Determined to reclaim her integrity, Emily ended her affair with James, a difficult conversation that left both of them feeling a mix of relief and regret. She also made the decision to step back from the promotion, recognizing that her self-worth was not defined by her position in the corporate hierarchy, but by the values she chose to uphold. As Emily and Alex began their life together, she felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for years. She realized that true success wasn't about climbing the corporate ladder or securing a title. It was about living in alignment with one's values, building relationships rooted in respect and love, and finding fulfillment in the simple, meaningful moments of life. The game of hearts teaches that in the pursuit of ambition, one can easily lose sight of what truly matters. Success and power may offer temporary satisfaction, but they can never replace the fulfillment that comes from genuine connections, integrity, and a life lived authentically. True happiness lies not in the games we play or the accolades we earn, but in the courage to be true to ourselves, to love deeply, and to choose a path that aligns with our heart's values. In the heart of New York City, amid its relentless energy and ambition, Emily Lawson found herself at a critical juncture. She was a dedicated marketing executive at Callahan & Co., an advertising agency known for its high-profile clients and cutthroat culture. After nearly a decade of proving her worth, Emily was finally in line for the promotion that could define her career, a role that would make her the youngest partner in the company's history. It was the kind of position she had sacrificed for over the years, foregoing friendships, vacations, and relationships to chase this dream. But now, on the cusp of achieving everything she thought she wanted, she felt an unsettling mix of exhilaration and dread. The looming promotion was not her only distraction. Her boss, James Callahan, had taken a special interest in her career. James was charismatic and insightful, a man who knew how to push boundaries and charm his way through life. Emily respected him, even admired him in some ways. She had convinced herself that the long hours they spent together were solely professional late-night strategy sessions, dinners to discuss clients, drinks to celebrate victories. Yet, she couldn't deny the undercurrent of attraction. The flirtation between them was subtle but unmistakable, and as her promotion approached, James's attention only intensified. It was during one of these late nights that the lines between their personal and professional lives began to blur. They were working on a high-stakes pitch for a major client, one that required meticulous preparation and creativity. After hours of brainstorming and strategy discussions, they decided to take a break. They walked out to the balcony overlooking the city, the night skyline glittering with endless lights, casting a romantic glow over the scene. James leaned against the railing, his gaze intense. "You know, Emily," he said, his voice softer than usual, "you're one of the most talented people I've ever worked with. I couldn't have achieved half of what I have without you." Emily felt her heart skip a beat. She wasn't used to compliments, especially not from someone like James. "Thank you," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I've learned a lot from you too." There was a moment of silence, a tension hanging in the air as they both looked out over the city. Finally, James spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. "I know this may be crossing a line, but I think there's something more between us, Emily. Emily felt a rush of emotions, excitement, confusion, and guilt. She knew that she was playing with fire, that getting involved with her boss could jeopardize everything she had worked for. But in that moment, the allure of James's world, the power, the excitement, the thrill of the forbidden was hard to resist. Their relationship deepened in the weeks that followed, evolving from late-night conversations into secret rendezvous. Emily convinced herself that she could keep her personal and professional lives separate, that she was in control. But the thrill of their affair began to consume her, and soon, her work and personal life blurred into one dangerous game. Meanwhile, her old college friend Alex re-entered her life. Alex had always been her anchor, the person who reminded her of who she was before ambition took over. He was everything James wasn't: grounded, compassionate, content with a simple life. While James pursued wealth and power, Alex devoted his time to helping disadvantaged youth, finding meaning in making a difference rather than making money. They met for coffee one weekend, and it felt like stepping back into a simpler, more genuine world. "Emily, you seem different," Alex remarked, a hint of concern in his voice. "Are you happy?" Emily forced a smile. "Of course. I have everything I ever wanted. I'm on the verge of becoming a partner." "Alex, this is what I've been working for." Alex nodded, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "Success is great, but it doesn't mean much if it comes at the cost of your happiness." Their conversation stayed with Emily, haunting her during her late nights with James and her high-stress days at the office. She began to question what she truly wanted. Was it the high-flying life that James represented? Or was it the simpler, more meaningful connection she felt with Alex? Emily's affair with James grew more complicated when he hinted that her promotion might depend on their relationship. Though he didn't say it outright, his words were laced with suggestion. "I've always been a big believer in rewarding loyalty," he told her one evening over dinner, "especially loyalty that goes above and beyond." Emily felt a wave of nausea. She had worked too hard to have her achievements diminished by this implication. The idea that her success could be tainted by an affair made her question everything she had sacrificed. She started to resent James, seeing him not as a mentor, but as a man who used his power to control and manipulate. Around this time, Alex invited her to a fundraiser for his nonprofit organization. It was a modest event held in a community center, worlds away from the glitz and glamour of her usual social circles. As she watched Alex interact with the people there, his kindness and humility struck her. Here was a man who had found fulfillment in helping others, in building something meaningful rather than chasing status or power. Being with Alex reminded her of who she was before she lost herself in ambition. After the fundraiser, they walked through the quiet streets, talking about life, love, and purpose. Alex turned to her, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Emily, I know we're on different paths, but I've never stopped caring about you. I don't know where life will take us, but I believe that you deserve to be happy, truly happy." His words hit her harder than she expected. That night, as she lay in bed, Emily realized that she was at a breaking point. She couldn't continue living a double life, torn between two men, two versions of herself. She had to choose between the pursuit of power and the pursuit of happiness, between the world of glamour and the world of authenticity. The next day, Emily went to James's office, determined to end their affair and reclaim her integrity. It was a difficult conversation, filled with tension and unspoken regret. James tried to persuade her, reminding her of the rewards that awaited her if she stayed by his side. But Emily stood her ground, realizing that true success couldn't be bought or manipulated. She walked out of his office with a newfound sense of clarity, ready to forge a path that was true to herself. Emily also decided to step back from the promotion, recognizing that her value wasn't defined by a title or a paycheck. She wanted to rediscover the parts of herself that she had lost along the way, the parts that Alex had helped her remember. She reached out to him, and together, They began building a life rooted in love, compassion, and purpose. The Game of Hearts is a story about the choices we make in the pursuit of success and happiness. It teaches that true fulfillment doesn't come from power or prestige, but from living a life of integrity, building genuine connections, and choosing a path that aligns with one's values. True success is not about winning the game, it's about staying true to your heart. Emily Lawson had always known that success in the corporate world was never a guarantee, but the drive to prove herself kept her going. She had spent years working tirelessly at Callahan and Co., an advertising firm whose name was synonymous with power, prestige, and a lifestyle of luxury. At 29, she was already one of the brightest rising stars in the company when she was offered the chance to work closely with James Callahan, the firm's charismatic and notoriously demanding CEO. She had been both excited and intimidated. James had a reputation for spotting talent and for using it to further his own empire. His personal life, like much of his professional one, was shrouded in mystery. He was divorced. His relationships with women were widely known to be transactional, and there was always the hint that those who were closest to him benefited from more than just professional guidance. Emily had heard the whispers, but had never paid them much attention. She convinced herself that she was different, that James saw her as someone with genuine potential, and that any personal attention he gave her was only because of her exceptional abilities. Their relationship started innocently enough: late-night meetings, strategy sessions, and brainstorming sessions. James was always complimentary of her work, and she valued his mentorship. But as the days passed, something shifted. There were moments when their hands brushed, when their eyes lingered a little too long. At first, she dismissed it as nothing more than professional camaraderie. But as their connection deepened, Emily began to sense that something more was simmering between them. On one particularly late evening, after the rest of the office had cleared out, James invited Emily to dinner. They went to a secluded Italian restaurant with low lighting and soft music. It was intimate, almost private. Over a glass of wine, they discussed not only work, but their personal lives, something Emily hadn't expected. She was caught off guard when James shared the story of his failed marriage, his regrets, and how the loss of that relationship had affected his drive for success. For the first time, she saw him as vulnerable, not just the powerful, enigmatic figure she had admired from afar. That vulnerability opened a door between them, an invisible bond that Emily couldn't ignore. "I've never had anyone truly understand me," James said softly, his voice carrying an edge of loneliness. "You're different, Emily. You push me to be better, and I find myself drawn to you in ways I never expected." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Emily's heart raced. She knew this could be the beginning of something dangerous. Yet the pull was undeniable. Her rational mind warned her to keep things professional, to avoid entangling herself in something that could ruin her career. But the allure of James, the excitement, the power was intoxicating. Back in her apartment that night, Emily couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, replaying the evening in her mind. She had always prided herself on being in control of her choices, but now she felt like she was losing her grip. The next day, she received a text from James, inviting her to meet him after work. The casual message only added to the confusion, and despite the voice in her head telling her to stay away, she found herself agreeing. Their affair began slowly, but escalated quickly. What started as after-hours drinks turned into private dinners, then long walks in the city. They shared intimate moments, discussions of their dreams, fears, and past mistakes. Emily told James things she hadn't shared with anyone, even Alex, her old college friend, who had always been her emotional anchor. Alex was the opposite of James in every way. Alex had been her boyfriend in college, and their relationship had been rooted in deep, mutual respect and love. After graduation, they had parted ways, with Emily diving into her career and Alex staying in the city to work for a non-profit organization focused on providing mentorship to troubled youth. They kept in touch over the years, their connection never fading, though it had taken a backseat to Emily's growing career. One evening, while having coffee with Alex, Emily found herself confiding in him about the growing tension she felt. "Alex, I'm so close to a huge opportunity at work, but I'm starting to lose myself in it. There's someone I've been working closely with, James, and lately, I don't know what's happening between us. It's complicated." Alex, always the perceptive one, studied her face closely. "Complicated? Emily, you're one of the smartest, most grounded people I know, but it doesn't sound like you." She hesitated. "I know. I've been so focused on this promotion, on proving myself, but now, I don't know who I'm becoming. I don't know if it's worth it." Alex's face softened. "You've always been so sure of your path, but maybe you need to stop and ask yourself what really matters. It's not just about the title or the accolades. You deserve to be happy, to find fulfillment." Days passed, and Emily couldn't shake the truth in Alex's words. She started distancing herself from James, but he wasn't easily deterred. The moments between them continued to intensify. He began to subtly manipulate her emotions, offering support and mentorship while simultaneously crossing boundaries. He would compliment her endlessly, telling her that she was destined for greatness, that she was too talented to be held back by anything or anyone. His words, while flattering, began to feel hollow, and the emotional manipulation became more apparent. One evening, James invited her to his lake house, a place he had often mentioned as a retreat from the pressures of his public life. He made it clear that the trip was about business, but Emily could sense that he had other motives. The silence between them was palpable during the drive there, and Emily felt the weight of the decision she had been avoiding for so long. It wasn't until they were alone on the deck, watching the sun set over the lake, that James spoke again. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to this company, Emily. I know you have dreams of your own, but I think we can build something together. If you just trust me." The words were a subtle threat. Emily's heart raced as she realized the depth of the manipulation at play. James wasn't offering a partnership. He was offering a deal, a dangerous bargain that would cost her everything. She had worked so hard to get here, but the price of her ambition was now clear. It could cost her her soul. Back in New York, Emily's life became a whirlwind of self-reflection and indecision. The excitement she once felt in James's presence had turned into dread. She had tried to rationalize the affair, convincing herself that she was in control, that it was just part of the game. But the truth was undeniable. She had compromised her own values, her own integrity. It was during one of their late-night meetings that she finally realized what she had to do. James had again made a veiled reference to her promotion, telling her that her loyalty to him would not go unnoticed. His words felt like a chain around her neck, suffocating her. She knew that if she stayed any longer in this web of deceit, she would lose herself completely. The next day, she ended the affair. It was a quiet but resolute decision. She confronted James, who tried to persuade her otherwise, telling her that they could still build something together, that the future was bright, and her place was beside him. But Emily had already seen through his facade. She walked away, heart pounding, but clear-headed. She also made the decision to step back from the promotion. She had come to realize that her worth was not defined by a title or her place in the corporate hierarchy. She wanted to be true to herself, to live a life that aligned with her values. The Game of Hearts is a story about ambition, love, and the complexities of navigating one's values in a world that often prioritizes success over integrity. It teaches that true fulfillment cannot be found in power, prestige, or manipulation, but in living authentically and building relationships grounded in respect and love. Emily's journey reveals that sometimes, to find peace and happiness, we must let go of the illusions we've built and make choices that reflect who we truly are. Success is not defined by the titles we earn, but by the person we become in the process. Certainly, to further expand on the Game of Hearts, We will dive deeper into the emotions, conflicts, and transformations that Emily undergoes throughout the story. The extended version will explore her internal battles, moments of growth, and the consequences of her decisions, all while keeping the central theme of balancing ambition and personal integrity. This version will add more texture to the character interactions, Emily's relationships with James and Alex, and the turning points that lead to her ultimate realization. Emily Lawson stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of Callahan and Coe's sleek, modern offices, gazing out at the endless skyline of New York City. The city's lights flickered like stars, each one representing a dream, a goal, or a decision. For years, Emily had worked relentlessly to reach this pinnacle, and now, as she stood on the edge of a career-defining moment, she wasn't sure if she was prepared for the price that would come with it. Emily had always been determined, disciplined, and single-minded in her pursuit of success. After completing her degree at a prestigious university, she had moved to New York with only a suitcase and a burning desire to make a name for herself. Over the years, she had risen through the ranks at Callahan and Co. From a junior copywriter to a senior executive in the marketing department, she had done it all, sacrificed weekends, nights with friends, and even relationships, all for the one thing she had believed would make her life complete: success. The promotion to partner had been the goal she had been working toward for nearly a decade. She could almost taste it now. All her efforts, all her sleepless nights, were finally going to pay off, or so she thought. But as the day approached when the promotion would be officially announced, Emily began to feel a creeping sense of unease. Something was missing, and she couldn't quite put her finger on it. It wasn't the job; she was good at what she did, but there was a hollow ache, an emptiness that even her accomplishments couldn't fill. She had everything she had ever worked for, but she still felt as though she were standing on the edge of an abyss. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her phone buzzing on the desk. It was a message from James. "Dinner tonight? I'd like to talk about your future." Emily's heart skipped a beat. James Callahan, the CEO of Callahan and Co., had always been a figure of power and influence. He had an aura of confidence that drew people to him, but his personal life was shrouded in mystery. Rumors about his love life had circulated for years, about the women who came and went in his life, about the power dynamics at play in his relationships. Emily had always told herself that her connection with James was purely professional, but over the months of working closely with him, she could feel a subtle shift. There was a chemistry, a tension between them that was hard to ignore. It wasn't that she hadn't been attracted to him; on the contrary, she had admired his intelligence, his drive, and the way he could command a room with just a glance. But she had always kept that part of herself in check. She was focused. She was disciplined. She wasn't about to make the same mistakes that had ruined the careers of so many ambitious people in her industry. But the invitation to dinner was different. It was the kind of invitation that could change everything. That night, they met at an exclusive, dimly lit restaurant in the heart of Manhattan, a place where the power players in the city gathered to make deals, share secrets, and indulge in the luxury of their success. The atmosphere was intimate, with soft jazz playing in the background and the flickering glow of candlelight casting shadows on their faces. Over wine and appetizers, they talked about the company, about clients, and about strategy. But the conversation inevitably turned to Emily's future. "You've been exceptional, Emily," James said, his voice low, almost seductive. "Your work ethic, your vision, your ability to see the bigger picture is unparalleled. The company needs someone like you." She could feel his gaze on her, heavy with meaning. There was a pause, and then he continued, his tone shifting, becoming more personal. "Emily, I know how hard you've worked for this. I've been watching you closely. You're not just another executive to me. You're someone who could help me take this company to the next level. And I believe we could do something together, something great." His words sent a jolt through her. She had always been aware of his magnetism, but now it was impossible to ignore. James wasn't just talking about business. He was talking about partnership, something deeper, something more intimate. Are you saying? Emily began, her voice faltering. She didn't know how to finish the sentence. She didn't know what to make of the implications of his words. James leaned forward, his eyes locking with hers. I'm saying that you have a future here by my side. If you're willing to trust me, we can both achieve something extraordinary. But it's not just about the company. It's about you and me, Emily. About what we can build together. The world seemed to stop for a moment. Emily could feel the weight of his words pressing down on her. There it was, the temptation, the allure of power, of success, of a future that could be hers if she played the game right. But at the same time, there was something unsettling about it, something that felt like a trap. She didn't know what to say. She wasn't sure what she wanted. But in the silence that followed, something shifted within her. The allure of James, the promise of success, of everything she had worked for, was too strong to resist. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened. At first, it was subtle, small gestures, an unexpected compliment, a lingering touch, an invitation to dinner that felt more personal than professional. But soon, their interactions became charged with a kind of intensity that was impossible to ignore. Emily found herself drawn to him in ways she hadn't expected. She admired his intelligence, his ambition, and the way he seemed to understand her in a way no one else had. But the more time she spent with James, the more conflicted she became. She had always prided herself on being independent, on carving out a future on her own terms. But now, she felt like she was losing control. Every decision she made seemed to be influenced by him, by his opinions, by his desires. And yet, there was a part of her that couldn't help but be seduced by the power he wielded. The promotions, the deals, the luxury, it all seemed so enticing. She began to wonder if she could truly separate her professional ambitions from the emotions that were now entangled in the affair. Was this the price of success? Was it all part of the game? Meanwhile, Alex had re-entered her life. Alex had been her first real love, the one person who had known her before the ambition, before the long hours and sleepless nights. They had met in college, a time when she had still believed in love, in simple joys, in being true to oneself. But as her career had taken off, their relationship had slowly fizzled out. Alex had never understood her drive, and she had never understood his more laid-back, altruistic approach to life. But now, after years of silence, Alex was back in the city, working for a nonprofit that focused on community development. They met for coffee one morning, and it was as if no time had passed. You look different, Alex said, his voice full of concern as he studied her face. You've always been driven, but there's something in your eyes now. It's not the same fire. Emily tried to brush it off. I'm fine, Alex, really. I'm on the verge of a big promotion. Everything's going according to plan. But Alex wasn't convinced. Is it though? Or are you losing yourself in the process? You've always been someone who cared about more than just success. What about your happiness? Your peace of mind? His words hit her harder than she expected. As she listened to Alex speak about his work helping at-risk youth, making a difference in the community, Emily realized that she had become so consumed by her career that she had forgotten what truly mattered. Alex was living a life of purpose, a life she had once believed in. And yet, here she was, on the verge of achieving everything she thought she wanted and feeling emptier than ever. The story about the seductive nature of power, ambition, and the complex emotions that drive our choices. Emily's journey reveals the internal conflict that many face in a world where success is often measured by titles and wealth. It teaches that while ambition is important, true fulfillment lies in staying true to one's values, relationships, and self-worth. Success should never come at the cost of losing yourself or the people who matter most. The story encourages readers to reflect on their own motivations and to ask themselves, what are you willing to sacrifice in the game of life? And is it worth the cost? Emily Lawson had always prided herself on her drive and determination. When she first arrived in New York, she had nothing but a few $100s in her pocket, a sharp mind, and a relentless desire to prove herself. Years later, she was a respected executive at Callahan & Co., one of the top advertising firms in the city. From the outside, Her life seemed perfect. She had a thriving career, a well-designed apartment, and access to some of the most exclusive circles in the city. But despite the outward success, there was a restlessness within her. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate the life she had built. She just didn't know if it was enough anymore. She had worked hard to get to where she was, but at what cost? How many relationships had she sacrificed? How many opportunities for personal happiness had been abandoned in the pursuit of success? The promotion she was about to receive at Callahan & Co. was the culmination of years of hard work. And yet, as the announcement loomed closer, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, something fundamental to her own sense of peace and fulfillment. The emptiness inside her grew as she spent more time with James Callahan, her boss and mentor. The connection between them, once professional, had now shifted into something more complicated, something that tugged at her heartstrings and clouded her judgment. James Callahan, at first glance, was everything Emily had ever wanted in a mentor. He was brilliant, commanding, and successful. He had built Callahan & Co. from the ground up, transforming it into one of the most powerful advertising agencies in the world. When James spoke, people listened. He exuded an aura of control and sophistication that made him irresistible to both colleagues and clients alike. But behind the powerful persona, James was a man burdened by his own loneliness. His personal life had been littered with failed relationships, and his reputation in the business world was just as complicated. Emily had heard the whispers about his past affairs, his failed marriage, and the way he often used his charm to manipulate others for his own benefit. At first, she had convinced herself that she wasn't like the others, that she was different. But as the days wore on, she began to question whether the lines between professional respect and personal attraction had become too blurred. Their professional relationship was one of mutual admiration. James often praised her creativity and strategic thinking, and Emily respected his no-nonsense approach to business. He was a mentor, a guide, someone who pushed her to be better. But as they spent more time together, late-night strategy meetings turned into casual dinners, and casual dinners turned into personal confessions. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the office, James invited Emily to his apartment. She hesitated, but ultimately agreed. It was not an unusual request. They had often met outside of work to discuss business, but this time, there was a tension in the air that Emily couldn't ignore. When she arrived, James greeted her with a glass of wine, his smile warm but filled with something more, something Emily couldn't quite place. They sat on the balcony, overlooking the lights of the city, and talked about work, as they often did. But then, James shifted the conversation, his voice softer, more intimate. "You've been with me through some of the toughest projects, Emily," he said, his gaze unwavering. "I've seen the way you approach challenges. You're not just talented, you're driven in a way that I find inspiring. It's rare to find someone like you, someone who shares my vision so completely." Emily's heart began to race. The way he looked at her, the way he spoke, it was different now. She had felt it before, the spark of attraction between them. But now it was undeniable. His words made her feel valued, made her feel seen in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. "You're different too, James," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You push me to be better, to think bigger." James smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. "I can see that in you, and I think you've got even more potential than you realize. You and I together, we could do incredible things. You're the only one who truly understands what it takes to succeed at this level." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with promise. Emily's mind raced. She had always been ambitious, always determined to prove herself. But was this what she wanted? Was this the path she had been working toward? Or was she just caught in the allure of James's charm, seduced by the idea of power and success that he represented? As the night wore on, the distance between them closed. They shared more than just words. In the quiet of the apartment, with the city skyline glittering in the distance, Emily allowed herself to give in to the magnetic pull she had felt toward James. But when the moment came, when they finally kissed, Emily was not sure if it was passion or the culmination of her ambition that had driven her to this point. She had crossed a line one she couldn't undo. The affair with James intensified over the following weeks, and Emily found herself walking a fine line between desire and guilt. On the surface, she continued to excel in her role at Callahan and Co., her strategic ideas propelling the company to new heights. But inwardly, she was struggling. The lines between professional ambition and personal emotions had become blurred, and she began to question the choices she had made. At the same time, Alex Ray entered her life. Alex had always been a contrast to James. While James was a man of power and influence, Alex had always been grounded, focused on helping others. They had been close in college, before Emily's career had taken over her life. Alex had been the one person who had truly understood her, who had seen her as more than just an ambitious woman, but as someone with dreams beyond titles and accomplishments. Their relationship had ended when Emily had thrown herself into her career, too consumed by the need to succeed to notice that she was drifting away from the people who mattered most. But now, years later, Alex was back in the city, working for a nonprofit organization focused on youth empowerment. He reached out to Emily, and they met for coffee one morning, their conversation flowing as easily as it had when they were younger. "You've changed, Em," Alex said, his voice tinged with concern as he looked at her. "I see it in your eyes. You're not the same person I knew. You're so focused on this success, but I don't see the joy in you anymore. Is it worth it?" Emily swallowed hard. His words struck deep, and for the first time in a long while, she was forced to confront the truth. She had sacrificed so much in the name of ambition, and yet, there was a hollow emptiness inside her that no achievement could fill. She had everything she had ever wanted, and yet, she felt like she was losing herself. "I don't know, Alex," she confessed. "I thought this was everything I wanted. I thought if I reached the top, I would finally be happy. But now, I'm not so sure. I don't know what I'm chasing anymore." Alex looked at her with a mixture of understanding and sadness. "You're chasing something that can't be found at the top of a corporate ladder. You're chasing something inside yourself, something you've lost along the way." As the days passed, Emily found herself torn between the worlds of ambition and love. She continued to see James, but each moment felt more like an obligation than a choice. She had built her entire life around the idea of success, but now, she wasn't sure if that success was worth the price she had paid. The affair with James had once felt exhilarating, but now, it felt like a trap, a game she was no longer sure she wanted to play. One evening, after a particularly difficult meeting, Emily found herself in a quiet park, alone with her thoughts. She stared at the sky, the stars distant and cold, and realized that she had been looking for fulfillment in all the wrong places. She had been so consumed by the idea of success, by the power, the accolades, that she had forgotten what it meant to live authentically, to pursue happiness without sacrificing who she was. The Game of Hearts reveals the dangers of losing oneself in the pursuit of success and the seductive nature of ambition. Emily's journey highlights the internal struggle many face in balancing personal desires with professional goals. The story encourages readers to reflect on their own lives and ask the hard questions. What is the cost of your success? What sacrifices are you willing to make? Ultimately, true fulfillment lies not in titles or accolades, but in living a life that aligns with your values, nurturing the relationships that matter, and staying true to who you are. It teaches that love, authenticity, and happiness should never be sacrificed at the altar of ambition. Emily Lawson had always believed that success could be measured by titles, money, and recognition. When she first arrived in New York, she had been wide-eyed, eager, and driven by a singular purpose: to prove herself in a city that was known for crushing dreams as much as it made them. Her early days at Callahan and Co. had been grueling long hours, sleepless nights, and a determination to climb the corporate ladder, no matter the cost. She had sacrificed relationships, leisure, and even her own well-being for her ambition, convinced that if she could just make it to the top, everything would fall into place. And yet, as the promotion she had longed for her entire career neared, Emily found herself standing at a precipice, staring out into the abyss of uncertainty. Everything she had worked for was within her grasp, but instead of feeling elated, she felt numb. There was a hollowness inside her, an aching emptiness that no amount of career success could fill. She had reached the peak of her professional life, but she was starting to wonder, was this truly what she had always wanted? Or had she been so focused on the destination that she had lost sight of what truly mattered along the way? Her mind kept returning to the idea of power. What was it that James Callahan offered her that had clouded her judgment and tempted her into a dangerous affair? Was it just the pull of his influence, or was it something more? James Callahan had been a mentor to Emily in many ways, a powerful and charismatic figure. He had always been the embodiment of the kind of success Emily had sought. He had built his empire from the ground up, and in his world, ambition was the currency that kept everything moving. When Emily had first started working with him, she had admired his sharp mind, his confident demeanor, and the way he commanded the room. He had the power to make or break careers with a single decision, and Emily knew that aligning herself with him could open doors she had only dreamed of. But now, as their professional relationship deepened into something more personal, Emily began to realize that James was not just a mentor, he was a master manipulator. He knew exactly how to use his charm to bend people to his will, to make them believe that they were part of something bigger than themselves, that they could be a part of his success. The problem was, the more Emily gave in to him, the more she lost sight of her own identity. There were moments when she would look at James, really look at him and feel a sense of awe. He was powerful, accomplished, and magnetic in ways she could not deny. But there were other moments, quieter ones, when the doubt crept in. Was it truly love that she felt for him? Or was it simply the allure of power, of being by the side of someone who seemed to have it all? Was she in love with James, or with the idea of what he represented? The more Emily spent time with James, the more she was drawn into his world, a world where success was everything, and personal desires were secondary. Their relationship was intoxicating. They would spend late nights discussing business, their conversations often shifting to more personal matters. They spoke about their pasts, their fears, and their desires. James revealed his past relationships, his failed marriage, and the loneliness that often accompanied his position at the top. Emily listened, intrigued by the vulnerability he rarely showed to others, and found herself empathizing with him in ways she hadn't expected. But beneath the surface of their growing intimacy, Emily was aware of the growing conflict within her. She had always prided herself on her independence, her ability to stand on her own 2 feet, and yet, in the wake of her affair with James, she began to feel increasingly dependent on him, not just emotionally, but also in her career. She had spent so many years proving herself to the world, but now, she felt as if she was somehow tethered to James's approval, to his vision of their future together. The more she gave in to him, the more she found herself questioning whether she had lost control of her own destiny. At the same time, Alex reappeared in Emily's life. Alex was different from James in every possible way. He was idealistic, grounded, and deeply connected to his sense of purpose. When they had been together in college, Emily had felt a sense of peace with him, a quiet certainty that she had never experienced with anyone else. Alex had understood her in ways that no one else could. He had always encouraged her to pursue her passions and make a difference in the world, not just to climb the corporate ladder for the sake of ambition. Their relationship had ended when Emily had become consumed by her work, unable to balance the demands of her career with the needs of their relationship. At the time, She had been convinced that her career was the most important thing in her life, that love and relationships could wait. But now, years later, as Alex came back into her life, Emily began to question the choices she had made. They met for coffee, and the familiarity between them was immediate. Their conversations flowed easily, as if no time had passed. But there was an underlying tension that Emily could feel, an unspoken acknowledgement of the choices they had both made. Alex could see the changes in her, the way her ambition had overshadowed everything else in her life. "You look different, Em," Alex said, his voice full of concern. "It's like you've become someone else. When we were together, you used to care so much about making a difference. Now, it feels like all you care about is power. Is that really what you want?" Emily didn't know how to answer. She had spent so long convincing herself that success would be enough, that reaching the top would make her happy. But now, the emptiness was undeniable. "I thought it was, Alex," she admitted, her voice soft. "I thought that if I achieved everything I wanted, everything would fall into place. But now I'm not sure. I feel like I'm losing myself, like I'm becoming something I didn't want to be." Alex looked at her with compassion, his expression understanding, but tinged with sadness. "You've always been someone who wanted to make a difference. You wanted to help people, to create something meaningful. But now, I don't know if you even know what you want anymore." Emily was struck by his words. She had been so consumed by the chase for success that she had forgotten why she had started the journey in the first place. Was it just for the accolades? Or had she once dreamed of creating something that would truly make an impact? Something that went beyond personal success? In the days that followed, Emily found herself at a crossroads. The affair with James had given her a taste of what it was like to be truly powerful, to be part of something larger than herself. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that the price she was paying was too high. She was losing herself, her sense of purpose, and her sense of integrity. The affair had become a dangerous game, that she wasn't sure she was willing to continue playing. She began to spend more time reflecting on her past, on the person she had once been. She remembered the idealistic young woman who had come to New York with nothing but a dream. A woman who had believed that success was not just about wealth, but about making a difference. Emily began to question whether she had lost sight of that woman, whether she had become so entangled in her ambition that she had forgotten what it meant to live a fulfilling, authentic life. One evening, after a particularly heated argument with James about the future of the company, Emily found herself walking the streets of Manhattan. The city was alive with energy, the lights bright and blinding, but Emily felt lost. She had everything she had ever wanted except peace of mind. She had the promotion, the status, the power, but she didn't have herself. The Game of Hearts is a story about the complexity of ambition, love, and self-identity. It shows how easy it is to become so consumed by the pursuit of success that we lose sight of what truly matters: our integrity, our relationships, and our sense of self. Emily's journey is a reflection of the choices we all face, the tension between professional ambition and personal fulfillment. The story urges readers to reflect on their own lives, to ask themselves if the pursuit of success is worth losing who we are in the process. Ultimately, true happiness lies not in power or prestige, but in living a life aligned with our deepest values, in nurturing the relationships that bring us joy, and in staying true to our own hearts. Emily Lawson sat in the conference room, surrounded by her colleagues, each of them nodding approvingly as they discussed their latest project. She was a pivotal part of the team, and her creative contributions had made her a trusted voice at Callahan and Co. But as the meeting dragged on, Emily felt increasingly disconnected. The words around her blurred, and her mind wandered, her thoughts no longer on the presentation, but on the tug-of-war between the life she had built and the one she was beginning to question. The final draft of the campaign was ready, and once again, Emily was poised to take the lead in executing a high-profile project. That would cement her place as one of the top executives in the company. Her career was everything she had worked for, and every moment had led to this point of recognition. But something was off. The glow of success that had once exhilarated her now felt like a weight on her chest, suffocating her. James Callahan had always been her mentor, but their relationship had evolved into something far more complicated. The attraction they shared had always simmered beneath the surface, but now it was undeniable. James was no longer just the charismatic, successful businessman. He had become an all-consuming presence in her life. His words lingered long after their meetings, and his gaze often intense, searching made her question whether she was just another pawn in a game he played better than anyone. She knew James was a brilliant manipulator. He didn't just charm people, he drew them in, made them believe that they were essential to his success. Emily had fallen for that charm at first. It was professional admiration. She had looked up to him, not just for his brilliance, but for the empire he had built. But as the affair continued, the line between mentor and lover became increasingly blurred. She had known James's reputation, his history of using women to fuel his ambitions, but somehow, she had convinced herself that she was different. The reality was harder to face. James wasn't interested in the woman she was becoming. He was interested in what she could do for him. He wanted her ambition, her drive, her ability to push the company forward. In his eyes, Emily was more than just an employee or a lover. She was an asset, a key player in the game of power that he had been playing for decades. There were moments when Emily wondered whether her feelings for James were truly love, or if she had simply been swept up in the intoxicating allure of success. She began to question her own motives. Was she attracted to him because of his power, or was it because she believed she could find her own power through him? She no longer knew the answer. Her internal conflict reached its peak when James once again invited her to dinner. The evening after the board meeting where she had just been promoted to a new position. The promotion was supposed to be a triumph, a moment of victory. But as she sat across from James at the upscale restaurant, she felt a sense of loss. She had fought so hard for this, and yet, the joy she had expected to feel had eluded her. James noticed the change in her mood almost immediately. "You don't seem as happy as I thought you would be," he said, leaning in slightly, his voice smooth and steady. Emily stared at her wine glass, swirling it slowly, unsure of how to respond. She had spent so much time building this version of herself, the successful, confident woman who had it all, but now, she was starting to feel like she didn't know who she was anymore. "It's not what I thought it would be," she admitted quietly, her voice thick with emotion. James raised an eyebrow. "You mean the promotion?" he asked, his voice dripping with curiosity. Emily nodded, her eyes meeting his for the first time that evening. "Yes. I've spent so many years chasing success, and now that I've reached the top, I don't feel fulfilled. I thought this would make everything clear, but it hasn't. It's like I've lost sight of what I really want." James's expression softened, but only for a moment. He placed his hand on top of hers, his grip firm. "You've been chasing the wrong thing, Emily. Success is just a tool. It's a means to an end. What you need to focus on now is power. The kind of power that can shape the world around you. That's what matters." His words resonated with her, and for a moment, she almost felt reassured. She had been so focused on success, on the idea of achieving something grand, that she hadn't stopped to consider whether that success was really what she needed. But then, something inside her resisted. Was this truly the life she wanted? Or was she just following a script that had been written for her by someone else? The following days were filled with turmoil. Emily had worked her entire life for the chance to stand at the top of the corporate ladder. But now, she was questioning everything. She spent sleepless nights pacing in her apartment, grappling with the contradictions of her life. She had the job she always dreamed of, the admiration of her colleagues, and the loyalty of James. But she was haunted by the growing emptiness that accompanied these accomplishments. Then came the unexpected Alex. When he reappeared in her life, it felt like a breath of fresh air. He had been the one person who had always seen her for who she truly was, not just for her achievements. Alex had always been grounded, someone who cared deeply about social causes and the well-being of others. He was the opposite of James in every way, yet Emily felt a pull toward him that she couldn't explain. They met once again, this time in a small cafe in the West Village, a place they used to frequent when they were in college. The familiarity of the surroundings, combined with the quiet understanding they shared, made Emily feel more at ease than she had in months. Alex could see the changes in her immediately. His gaze softened when he looked at her, his voice filled with concern as he spoke. "You've become someone I don't recognize. I don't know what happened to the person who cared about making a difference. The person who wasn't just focused on winning, but on living a meaningful life." His words cut through her like a knife. It wasn't just the concern in his voice, but the raw honesty that echoed in his words. Emily had become so lost in her quest for power that she had forgotten what truly mattered. "I've been so focused on my career," Emily confessed, her voice trembling. "I've lost sight of everything else. I used to want to make a difference, to help people, but now it feels like I've been chasing something that isn't real, and I don't know how to stop." Alex's expression softened, his hand gently reaching across the table to touch hers. "You don't have to do this alone. You've always had the power to change things, but you need to remember why you started. Power isn't about control or manipulation, it's about connection. It's about making the world better, not just for yourself, but for others too." The conversation with Alex was a turning point for Emily. For the first time in a long while, she began to reflect on the person she had become. She realized that she had spent so much of her life trying to prove herself in the eyes of others, especially James, that she had lost touch with the core values that had once driven her. She had been consumed by the idea of success, by the power it could bring, but in the process, she had sacrificed her sense of self. As Emily looked back on her journey, she realized that ambition, when unchecked, could be a dangerous thing. She had been so determined to climb the ladder of success that she had stepped on the people she cared about, had allowed herself to be consumed by a game that was ultimately hollow. In the following weeks, Emily began to make changes. She started to reconnect with her own values, remembering the idealistic young woman who had come to New York, full of dreams of making a difference. She gradually distanced herself from James, recognizing that their relationship had never been about love, it had been about power, control, and manipulation. She also began to rebuild her relationship with Alex, slowly rediscovering the joy that came from helping others and living a life that felt authentic. The road to rediscovery was not easy, but it was worth it. Emily began to focus on projects that aligned with her passions, ones that brought her fulfillment rather than accolades. She reconnected with her love for creativity, using her talents to help causes that mattered, and in doing so, she found a sense of peace that she had never experienced before. The Game of Hearts illustrates the danger of losing oneself in the pursuit of success and the seductive nature of ambition. Emily's journey reveals how the desire for power can blind us to our true desires, leading us to make choices that ultimately leave us empty. The story encourages readers to reflect on their own lives and ask themselves, what is the cost of success? What are we willing to sacrifice to achieve our goals? True fulfillment comes not from power or prestige, but from living authentically, nurturing meaningful relationships, and staying true to the values that define us. It is a reminder that ambition should never overshadow the essence of who we are, and that happiness lies not in the accumulation of power, but in the pursuit of purpose. As Emily sat at her desk in the office, staring at the screen before her, a sense of overwhelming fatigue began to settle in. The city outside her window was alive with energy, its lights twinkling in the distance, But the glow of New York no longer seemed to have the same allure it once had. In the past, this city had been a symbol of possibility, a place where dreams were made and futures were forged. Now, it felt suffocating, a reminder of the price she had paid for her success. Emily could hear the buzz of conversation in the next room, the sound of her colleagues discussing their latest project. But the words were distant to her. She had been so engrossed in her work, in her climb to the top, that she had become a stranger to her own life. The realization was hard to swallow. She had given everything to her career. But at what cost? Her phone buzzed on the desk, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from James. "I hope you're ready for tonight. This project means everything. We'll celebrate after the meeting. You've earned it." The message sent a ripple of unease through Emily. She had heard those words from James many times before. You've earned it. But what had she really earned? Success? Recognition? Or had she simply earned the right to play in a game where the rules were written by others? Her fingers hovered over the screen, as if she might type something in reply, but the words never came. She didn't want to engage with him in that way anymore. The passion that had once drawn her to him, the allure of his power and influence, had started to feel like a trap. She no longer felt the same excitement when he spoke of business or of their future together. The truth was, she had started to feel like a pawn in a game she didn't fully understand. James had always been in control, always knowing how to maneuver the pieces on the board. And somewhere along the way, Emily had forgotten how to make her own moves. The phone call with Alex a few days ago still echoed in her mind. After years of silence, their connection had felt strangely familiar, as if no time had passed between them. In those moments, when they spoke about their past, their shared dreams, and the lives they had led since their relationship had ended, Emily realized how much she had lost, how much she had allowed to slip away. You've been living in a world of numbers and power for so long, Alex had said, his voice gentle but firm. I get that ambition drives you, but when was the last time you really asked yourself why you're doing this? What do you want out of all of this? His words were simple, but they felt like a jolt of electricity running through her. In her pursuit of success, she had forgotten to ask herself the most important question of all: why? After that conversation with Alex, Emily began to examine her life with a new lens. The weight of her ambition, the decisions she had made, and the relationships she had sacrificed all began to feel unbearably heavy. She had spent years proving herself to the world, fighting to climb to the top, but in doing so, she had lost touch with who she truly was. At first, the thought of leaving her high-powered job at Callahan and Co. seemed unthinkable. It felt like she would be abandoning everything she had worked for, like admitting failure. But deep down, she knew that her sense of self-worth could no longer be tied to her professional success. She was more than just the sum of her achievements, and yet, all she had known for so long was the pursuit of titles, awards, and recognition. Every day, she found herself at a crossroads. In the mornings, she would wake up, her thoughts consumed with the responsibilities of the day ahead. The constant rush, the pressure to perform, it was all she had ever known. But as she walked through the office halls, surrounded by her colleagues, she felt the creeping sensation that something was wrong. The accolades, the promotions, the praise, they no longer filled the void she had once believed they would. In her quieter moments, when she allowed herself the space to reflect, Emily began to realize that she had been chasing the wrong kind of fulfillment. She had been so focused on external validation that she had neglected the internal peace she once sought in her career. The job had become an obsession, a race to prove herself, and now it felt like a cage that she could no longer escape. One night, Emily found herself walking aimlessly through the streets of New York, the lights casting long shadows against the buildings. She had always loved the city, its energy, its chaos, its promise of endless opportunity. But tonight, it felt foreign to her, like a place where she no longer belonged. She wandered into a small park, the quiet contrast to the city's constant hum offering her a moment of solace. As she sat on a bench, her mind began to settle, and she allowed herself to feel everything she had been suppressing for so long. The weight of her choices, the loneliness that lingered even in the midst of success, the guilt she felt for having neglected those who had cared for her. James's voice came to her mind, his smooth, persuasive words that had convinced her that she was destined for greatness. He had once been the one to show her the path to power, to influence, to prestige. But now, she could see how his influence had clouded her judgment. She had become a reflection of his ambition, not her own. When she had first met James, he had seemed like a mentor, a man who had seen something in her that others hadn't. He had pushed her to achieve more than she thought possible. But now, she realized that his vision for her future had always been tied to his own ambitions, not hers. James had never truly cared about her. He had only cared about how she could advance his empire. In his world, she was a tool, not a partner. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. She had been so blinded by the allure of success that she had ignored the manipulation and control that James wielded over her. The affair had never been about love, it had been about power. And Emily had fallen into the trap. But as she sat in the park, the realization that she had lost herself no longer seemed like an insurmountable tragedy. It was a wake-up call, a chance for her to reclaim her life, her identity, and her future. The journey to rediscovering who she was, outside of her career and her relationship with James, would not be easy, but it was a necessary step. The next few weeks were transformative. Emily took time off from work, stepping away from the high-pressure environment that had dominated her life for so long. She spent time reflecting, reconnecting with her passions, and reevaluating the things that truly mattered to her. She began to volunteer for causes she had once cared deeply about, but had neglected due to the demands of her career. She worked with nonprofit organizations focused on education and social justice, two causes that had always ignited her sense of purpose. Slowly, Emily started to feel something that had long eluded her: fulfillment. But even more important than the work itself was the realization that she no longer needed external validation to feel worthy. She had spent so much of her life seeking approval from others, whether it was through career achievements or through James's influence, that she had forgotten the most important lesson of all. True happiness comes from within. During this time, Alex was a constant presence in Emily's life, offering support without pressure, allowing her the space to rediscover herself. The bond between them deepened, not out of necessity, but out of a genuine understanding of each other's struggles and growth. Emily began to realize that Alex had always been the one person who truly saw her, who accepted her for who she was, flaws and all. It wasn't the power or the status that drew them together. It was their shared values and the deep connection they had once shared. One evening, as they sat together in a quiet cafe, Alex spoke softly, as if reading her mind. "You don't need to prove anything to anyone, Em. You're already enough." The words, simple and unadorned, brought tears to Emily's eyes. For the first time in years, she felt the burden of her ambition lift, replaced by the understanding that she was worthy just as she was, not for what she had achieved, but for who she was becoming. The Game of Hearts is a tale about the consequences of living for others, seeking approval and validation in external achievements, and sacrificing our inner truth in the process. Emily's journey represents the struggle many face in balancing ambition with authenticity. The story teaches us that true success is not measured by titles, wealth, or power. It is found in living with purpose, reconnecting with our values, and fostering relationships that nourish our soul. It reminds us that, at the end of the day, we must never lose sight of who we are, what we truly want, and the deeper meaning behind our actions. The heart of the game is not in winning, but in living with integrity and peace. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you enjoy, then please like and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel.